Hello. I tried to film this video another time and my microphone died halfway through, so you couldn't even hear everything I was saying. But this is going to be a review, and I am reviewing Stephen King's Fairy Tale. I am a huge fan of Stephen King. There are hardly any books of his that I've read that I did not like. You know, Stephen King is like my comfort author because I just know that I'm going to enjoy whatever he writes, you know? But I'm really sad to say that that wasn't the case with Fairy Tale. Um so I ended up rating Fairy Tale 3 stars. It's a solid 3 stars. Because the beginning of the book started out so strong. It started out so good. I thought the characters were great. I thought that the story was really interesting, really intriguing, even though it was very like day to day. It wasn't exciting at all, but because I love Stephen King's writing, that was enough. I just, he has a way with words. And his writing, like, you could tell he's very intelligent, but he's also urban, and he's also very expressive and colorful when he writes. And I love that about Stephen King. And another thing is that I love about his writing and about his style is that he doesn't plot. And that's something that Stephen King himself has said. He doesn't like to plot his stories. And that you see the good and bad of that in Fairy Tale. For the first half, something like the first half of the book, it's so good. It's so almost spellbinding and enchanting. And it's great. It flows very well not having a plot. But then you get to like the second half of the book and you're like, no, this can't happen. This cannot happen. Because I do believe that plotting can really ruin a good story, and it can take it from being fluid, and it messes with the flow. It disturbs the flow of a story. When you plot it too much, it makes it very stiff. But I think with things like fantasy, things like thrillers and mysteries, these things need to be plotted out because you don't want to just be springing things on people and the story be unbelievable. Like, obviously, we're reading to escape, we're reading to to experience something different than what we would in everyday life, right? But at the same time, you want it to be realistically different. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want people to be able to know exactly what to expect in your writing, but you also don't just want to fling things on them out of nothingness. You know what I mean? You don't just want to bring things up from the dirt that we're just like, okay, where was that? Where did that come from? And so I do believe that you need to plot fantasy. I'm singling fantasy out because Fairy Tale was like a fantasy, I guess. And I thought that possibly Stephen King was trying to do a little too much with this book, with the second half. When the cast of characters was very simplistic, I thought, oh yeah, this is great. But then when we start adding in all these different characters and this new world that our main character Charlie steps into, things get really murky. The worlds, don't get me wrong, are very different. So you have the real world, and then you have, I think he called it Impus. And Impus is very different from our reality. Um, but because he was just pulling elements from so many fairy tales, and even pulling from Christianity, and I just thought that he was juggling too much. He had a little bit too much dip on his chip with this. And I thought maybe plotting a little bit better could have helped with that. Um and then I just also thought that it, he was maybe just a little bit lazy with like the language of the people of Impus, because it's stated several times throughout the book that they don't speak the same language as we do. We're told that Charlie can speak, for the sake of this video, let's call it Impusarian. We're told that he can speak Impusarian. Just out of nowhere, he can speak Impusarian. And it's like Stephen King, he would do something like Charlie would say awesome sauce, and he would say that, like, well, I ended up translating it to whatever the Impusarian term would be, and which I thought was very lazy. Like, if you're going to create a language for your people and they're not going to speak English, then you need to incorporate that into your story and show us that they speak a different language, instead of speaking English the whole time and then telling us that you're translating, or that Charlie is translating. Like, it just telling us that, I think that that's pretty lazy, and I think that's not very respectful of your audience. You know what I mean? So that they speak whatever the kind of English that was used in fairy tales back in the day. So I don't know, because it's not Elizabethan English. It's not like Shakespearean English. It's that English that kind of fits right in between there. It's not modern contemporary English, but it's also not super old English or even mid English either. It's somewhere comfortably, we'll call it fairy tale English, where it's very formal, and where American contemporary slang doesn't really fit in. And I thought that Stephen King was maybe a little bit lazy in showing us that their language is completely different from our own, from modern day English. We're just told that it's different from modern day English, and there are like some little instances where Charlie begins to like speak in that fairy tale esque English. Um, and then just like for a second, he, like, I don't know, transforms and starts speaking like a prince from a fairy tale. And then he goes back to speaking contemporary English. It was so strange and so very confusing. And it felt like I was reading two totally different books, which was weird to me. Like, it felt like the first half of Fairy Tale was just like a totally different book than the second half, and I thought that that was strange, and so I ended up rating it 3 stars. I just thought there was too much going on, and I thought that maybe Stephen King was juggling a little bit too much with this one, and it really showed. Or maybe it's just me. But those are my thoughts on Fairy Tale, and I hope you enjoyed. And if you just want to become a little local hippie yourself, hug some trees and read some books, I'd love to have you here. I'd love it if you liked, commented, and subscribed to my channel. But until next time, I'll see you when I see you.